Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, May 15th, 2025, and today we're going to cover the annoying complexity of farm advice, considerations for starting a seed company, and the curious case of the disappearing compost. So, let's do it. All right, I'm out in the garden and I'm taking a look around, and I noticed that it is officially escape season in the garlic patch. So pull it up slightly, pop it off, and saute. All right, everyone, we've done it again. We've arrived at yet another Thursday. That's wonderful news. Yesterday, I obviously, as you could tell by that clip, I found that the garlic was starting to scape, which is super fun. Garlic scapes are the flowers off the garlic plant, and basically you pull them or pop them as early as you can. One, because that's when they're most tender and delicious to eat, but also two, leaving your garlic scapes too long can result in lower yields on your garlic by a considerable amount, up to 20% in some studies. Maybe tomorrow we will talk more about some of these garlic stages because garlic rules. All right, so as has become the tradition on Thursdays, I like to try and get caught up a bit on Patreon questions, which have been coming in fast and furious, which is awesome these past few weeks it's the spring, so that makes sense. So let's keep that tradition rolling. Our first Patreon question of the day comes to us from Philip Dion, who writes, quote, "Hi, Jesse. Part-time hobbyist in a northern climate here. I've grown my garden from a small hobby to an enthusiastic one." Awesome. Being in zone 3, I've grown a lot myself by getting a 5x10 tent I can keep in my basement, along with hydroponic system that can start 50-ish lettuce starts per month. Two basic questions here. First, would you consider running a cold climate recap series, which edits or delays and summarizes content by a month-ish in the new year? And second, 50 heads of lettuce per month is too much for me. Should I get chickens or a stand? End quote. Great questions. To your first question about the recap series, I'm assuming you basically mean that, for instance, I may start X crop here in February here in Kentucky. But for those of you in colder climates, you may not start that same crop until like March or so. I guess your idea here being maybe that I would account for that in the content or create new content kind of delayed, which I think is kind of a cool idea, but I'm not sure it would be entirely possible, especially not with the capacity I have. But I don't know that it would actually be that helpful. Although I do try to at least emphasize that if you're in a colder climate, that you'll want to wait on doing whatever it is that I'm doing at that time. Or conversely, if you're in a warmer climate, you will have to have done it already, which is much more complicated, but accounting for that for every crop would be a little bit of a daunting task, I fear. But I think almost more importantly, I've also never grown in a colder climate than what I'm in now, so I would be hesitant to advise when to do what exactly. That's something that only the experienced growers around you can and probably should advise you on. Farming is annoying like that, right? There is no one plug and play, one size fits all, approach to it. So it's really hard to advise people in different regions when to do what. Some regions have pests and diseases that we do not have here. Northern regions gets huge amounts of summer sunlight that we don't necessarily, plus darker, longer winters. But that huge amount of summer sunlight, that means you probably have to start stuff in greater quantities, like all at once, more so than we do. We can kind of spread it out a little bit more. When it comes to advising people on farming, even the thousands of variables have thousands of variables. It feels, to be honest, utterly bananas sometimes. But I do hope that I can get you started, and I will continue to try and be mindful of the different regional considerations as much as humanly possible. And of course, although this is a daily show, the information doesn't necessarily go out of date. I'm not generally reporting the news, so to speak. It's simply growing info every day, so don't hesitate to go back and listen to older shows. At least in a colder climate, you get the info ahead of time. The poor folks in warmer climates have to travel back in time, which is not easy, as the end of show stories have often taught us. To your second question about the head lettuce, sure, you could start a store or get some chickens. Either of those things would totally work, although one idea may be to try and grow something else alongside the lettuce in the same tray that has the same or similar days to maturity, like, I don't know, bok choy or green onions and or cilantro, etc. I'm not a hydroponics grower, so perhaps there are other complications with that I don't know, but that way you can get multiple different crops from the same tray and not have to waste the space or the lettuce, because eating 50 heads of lettuce in a month would be quite the feat. That's a lot. Anyway, I hope that's at least a little bit helpful, even if most of it was just explaining why it's hard for me to be helpful sometimes. Thanks for the questions, as always, and please keep them coming, Patreon members. We are inching closer to 1,000 Patreon members over there, which is super amazing. Not going to lie. Very honored by that. All right, we'll take a quick break and then pricing stuff. Specifically seeds, but really any stuff. Yeah, BRB.
It's night in the city, and I'm on my way back home. Humming on my favorite ditty.
Today's episode is brought to you by Farmhand. I started a CSA to grow food and build community, not to drown in admin work. Spreadsheets, emails, and pack lists take up too much time. If I could spend less time at my desk and more in the field, that'd be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand automates billing, newsletters, websites, and member support, saving CSA farmers 20 plus hours a week. Focus on farming, not paperwork. See how Farmhand can help. Book a one-on-one demo with founder Ari at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere the questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's second Patreon question comes from Patreon member Jesse Turitz, who writes, quote, "Hey, Farmer Jesse, I'm thinking about starting a small-scale seed supplier and nursery in Los Angeles. I really enjoy seed saving and have been doing so since I was a child. My goals would be to supply bioregional seed, root, and cutting stock to home gardeners and in this unique climate. While I have a lot of experience seed saving, I'm not as confident that my seeds are as quality as larger suppliers. I usually get great germination rates, but I get nervous about cross-pollination with neighbors or just missing something without the resource of a more professional operation. Not trying to make a ton of money, I just want to offset my costs in the garden as my ultimate goal. I feel like the best thing to do is just to start, but I don't feel like charging top price for my stock is appropriate. How should I price my stock? I don't want to undercut other suppliers, and I don't want to undervalue my seeds. The difference between $3 and $5 per packet seems negligible, but I'd hate for someone to pay more and then feel like the quality doesn't match. On the flip side, I'd hate to start low and then stop because it's not worth it, or have difficulty increasing prices down the line when my confidence is higher. Thanks so much for your help. Hope the recovery from the flooding is going well and wishing you a fantastic season." End quote. Okay, thank you. Interesting question. And yeah, thank you for the kind words about the flooding. I hope the same for you all with the fires, of course. What a year it's been already. All right, so my answer is going to start with assuming you have, and this goes for anybody thinking about seed production, that you've researched the state and local laws around seed selling in California, because for listeners who don't know, and this is especially true of seeds, every state has their own seed selling laws. For instance, just to use California, since that's where Jesse is, there are label requirements such as percentage of germination has to be on there, the calendar month and year of the germination test, when that was completed, etc. The seller must register every year and offer a germination assessment, among other regulations, which will be helpful in this case. It sounds like to maybe force you to do those germination tests and really figure out what your germination rates are and how to improve them. Now, of course, that should not discourage anyone from selling seeds. Some states are harder than others, but it's something to be aware of, and moreover, rootstocks and living plants may have their own regulations as well. So make sure definitely to start there. You don't want to break any laws. Not recommended. Now, to your actual question here, Jesse, the thing with the pricing is that you need to start by pricing them at what they cost you to produce. You need to figure out with the packaging, with water, with your time, with any initial investment, how much does it cost you to produce each seed packet? You cannot charge less than that number no matter what the market is charging. And you should always be working to keep that number as low as possible without sacrificing quality, because the lower that number is, the less you're spending out of pocket to produce it. Then to make a profit, you need to see what that item goes for from other retailers. Go to garden centers and check the online sellers and compare prices. Does your price fall into their range at all? You can then adjust up to meet their price. If you have to come down to meet their price below what it cost you to produce that item, don't. I mean, seriously, it's not going to help you at all to spend money to produce seeds. An idea instead would be to add value another way to make it more worth the price you have to charge, which could be in branding and services such as, seeds delivered to your door or whatever. You cannot in that way have this be a project that effectively costs you money to do. Because like you said, you're trying to offset some of your costs in the garden. Charge what you need to make a living, and then find ways to make the added expense to the customer make sense. Again, good packaging, branding, ease of access, those sorts of things. This same approach applies to veggies as much as it does to seeds. You cannot charge less than what it costs you to produce the product. But you will need to find that number before you can even start pricing something. That's the most important piece. Know what it costs you to produce it. And of course, following the laws. That's also kind of important. I think it's much harder to just make a little extra on the side with something like seeds than other items like, say, excess broccoli, because the amount of regulations and packaging. But you can grow a lot more seeds in a small area than you can, for instance, broccoli. So it may be worth creating a business out of it if you can identify a robust enough market. I think it's a cool idea, but you do have to think it all the way through. Anyway, I hope that helps. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. And when we return, where mulch goes to die, or something maybe less dramatic. Be right back. Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still using QuickBooks for your farm's bookkeeping? You're wasting time and losing money. Farm finances can be overwhelming, but they don't have to be. FarmRaise Tracks is the all-in-one tool built just for farmers. Manage expenses, prep for taxes, run payroll, and plan for the future without spreadsheets or stress. Just clear, organized insights to keep your operation thriving. Thousands of farmers trust Tracks to make smart financial decisions all year long. It's time you did too. Use code NOTIL20, that's all caps, no spaces, NOTIL20 for 20% off the life of your membership at farmraise.com. Today's episode of Growers Daily is also brought to you by Ring of Fire. What if you could turn your brush problem into black gold? The Ring of Fire biochar kiln is your spring tool for soil transformation, converting woody debris into high-quality biochar in just hours. Biochar will kickstart your compost, retain water and nutrients in your soil, and provide habitat for beneficial microbes. Now $19.95 with flat rate shipping. Their spring sale runs through June. Don't wait to boost your soil and optimize your inputs. Visit ringofire.earth/growers now to learn more. Also, for more information on biochar, check out the No-Till Market Garden podcast interview with Kelpie Wilson, inventor of the Ring of Fire kiln, that we will link in the show notes. All right, back to the show. All right, our third and final Patreon question of the day comes to us from Kyle Putnam, who writes, quote, weeding, sandy soil, and the case of the disappearing mulch. This is only my second year growing at scale in ground. My beds were no-till, but made out of a blend of sandy, gravelly, native topsoil that was hauled in as part of a building project and good compost. The first year, if the surface dried out, the top remained fluffy with compost. All good. I planted overwintered onions, which have done shockingly well, but the beds have been hammered by Pacific Northwest heavy winter rains. I have added light applications of compost a couple times in early spring. As soon as I cultivate with a collinear hoe and it rains, that compost basically disappears. I think it's simply getting washed down between the sand pores. Now, when it dries out, the soil gets a fairly hard crust. No more fluffy compost top. The plants still look great, and if you dig down, everything looks as it should. I just keep losing that mulch layer weeding. It's like the in-ground beds eat the mulch. Is this in-ground thing happening? If I keep adding compost, will it eventually hit a critical mass such that the sandy pores will fill up and I'll be able to maintain a fluffier top layer again? End quote. All right, finally, a mystery show. So I feel this question a lot because you watch growers in drier climates who can maintain their compost mulches for a long period of time without having to refresh it every year. And it's easy to be like, what am I doing wrong? But the answer is complicated. Here in Kentucky, as I am assuming it is in the Pacific Northwest, we get a pretty near endless onslaught of heavy rain, at least here in the spring. And basically, whatever compost you have down slowly and predictably somewhat disappears. But it's not just the rain. What is happening is likely a combination of things. First, as you cultivate with that collinear hoe, at least some of the compost mulch is falling into the pathways. It's also being slowly shredded by the shredders, not to be confused with Master Shredder, who famously did not eat mulch, but things like arthropods and worms or whatever chowing down and slowly breaking down the mulch pieces until they are so tiny they resemble soil particles, but are also so tiny that they are mingling with soil particles and no longer acting as a mulch. Additionally, some may be blowing away at drier times, or at least blowing into the paths, or just washing into the pathways during the heavier rain events. So yes, some of it is creeping down into the beds, thus why the soil below feels so nice, but it's also just not the mulch it used to be. It's partially decomposed, broken down, that sort of stuff. This is one of those confounding things about compost mulching. It is legitimately cheaper to maintain in some regions than others, and not just for the price of the compost itself, but for the amount of time it stays as a mulch. Replenishing compost here in Kentucky or there in the Pacific Northwest as a mulch would cost about 1.5 times to double what it does in cooler regions with less rainfall. So that's fun. As for the part of your question about the sand pores filling up eventually, maybe sorta. As that organic matter slowly makes its way into the soil and as soil microbes slowly stabilize it with aggregates, the sand will become less and less sand-like, but it may take a while, and because of the rain, it may never entirely meet the critical mass that you kind of referenced there. Anyway, such is the wacky world of farming, of mulch, of decomposition, of microbes, of basically everything we do. So in a way, it's a good thing. I mean, it could mean that your soil is really biologically active, which is great. In another way, it's just an annoying thing that we all have to deal with. But I should say, when we've had compost down for a couple years, year or 2 years, it starts to decompose more. And there is a little bit of a weed equilibrium where weeds come up and as the mulch layer goes down, right? For the most part, even when we get that little bit of crusting on the surface, those beds, like you said, below are really, really nice. And those tend to perform really well. And they're much easier to seed into and to plant into. So I always think of it like a mixed medium of soil and compost. So anyway, great question there, Kyle. And keep them coming, Patreon members. Otherwise, we're going to call it a Thursday. Don't forget, we are now officially a 501c3 over here at No Till Grower, so donations are tax deductible, greatly appreciated. You can learn more about that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, get your name of your farm out there, get the name of your farm company, whatever it is. You can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No Till Growers. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a copy of the Living Soul Handbook or the Seed Farmer at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or sign up in the month of May, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Lindsay Isbell. Awesome. Jesse. It's Jesse, but it's not quite Jesse. Jesse Finch. Cool looking name. I may throw a Y in my name. And Brian Green. Awesome. So here's the story. We're back, at our Peruvian cave that was hidden in the mountains. Few people are working on the plane. Few people are visiting the cave, kind of exploring it. And as the cave explorers went up there, they discovered like warm air emanating from the cave, which, as we discussed, is not normal. But as they get deeper into the cave, they also start to see a deep red light moving and swaying, and it looks wild. It looks like a light show. And they hesitate, but decide to just kind of go figure out what it is, like what in the world is making this light and this heat. Their assumption, of course, is that it is lava of some form, like there's a lava river or something, right? Probably makes sense, but this is not the case. Finally, they get to a place where they can kind of see down into the cave, and what they see is about 100 large amorphous rock creature things. Yep. Which they didn't know at the time, but these large rock creatures were actually several different superorganisms formed out of a giant cluster of extremophile bacteria living off sulfuric acid, dripping from the cave walls. But the science, irrelevant. What they also didn't know, though, is that if one of these things touched you, you too turned into one of these superorganisms. But they soon found that out, and that's tomorrow on The Cavers. I gotta keep trying on that one. All right. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow for Feedback Friday. Awesome. Bye.